Hey there. I am at the moment reading, or at least trying to read, another Bruce Sterling novel. Yay! This is a form of masochism that I indulge in every now and then. I don't even know why I keep doing this to myself. It must be some sort of deep seated psychosis, believing myself unworthy or something. I'm sure Sigmund Freud would love it. Anyway, I keep buying Bruce Sterling novels, and this particular one is Distraction. It's not doing a terribly good job of distracting me. Look at this, it's huge. Why did I think this was the good idea? 779, no, 488 pages. And the first 50 or 60 pages, I would have enjoyed myself more chewing my own toenails. Sterling is such a it's a name that you see so much of, and I keep thinking I should enjoy it. The very first Sterling novel I ever tried to read was The Difference Engine, which he collaborated on with William Gibson. Normally I would read a laundry list that William Gibson wrote. I've never found a book or story of his that I didn't enjoy until The Difference Engine, which I loathed. I don't think I even made it to page 40. With Distraction, I've tried to read it. This is about the 6th or 7th time. It is, on the bright side, the first time that I've actually managed to get past page 3. So I'm doing better than in previous efforts. Should I keep going? I really don't know. I really don't know. The Difference Engine was painful. The Zenith Angle of his, which I also read, I loathed it. I did not finish at page 90 because I just had enough. He's just such a hit or miss author for me. On the other hand, he wrote that one about the storm. What was it called? It's a really good one. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Where was it? Heavy Weather. I really enjoyed Heavy Weather. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then you had The Zenith Angle, which I DNF'd at page 90, like I said. Such a hit or miss author. It's like there's no predicting whether it's going to be agonizingly painful or not. So The Zenith Angle was just so zany. It was zany with a capital Z. It was disjointed and, as far as I could tell, both plotless and pointless. And the writing, I think that's where it falls down. You either love this guy's writing or you really can't stand it. And usually I can't stand it. In The Zenith Angle, I had no idea what he was on about most of the time. It was some sort of weird stream of conscious writing where the point of any given page was completely obscure. The prologue was 27 pages of some old guy talking to a young guy who may or may not have been his son about technology and a company they own or something like that. 27 pages of something like that, maybe. Then in chapter 1 we skipped to the computer guy who the previous 2 people in the prologue were talking about. And this is the main character. And then 9/11 happens. And then they hop in a car and drive across the country with no explanation for that, except that computer guy needs to consult with someone. Phones? I don't know. Internet? Whatever. Anyway, that someone is his grandpa of whom he's asking advice about taking a job, only the grandpa doesn't seem to know if he's talking to his son or his grandson or some random. I didn't care whether he was talking to his son or his grandson or some random, but whatever. Then the things they were talking about were so friggin' annoying. Skunkworks, grease machines, Docomo, documentary. What is a Docomo? I don't know. And I refused to Google. It was bad enough that I was wasting my time reading this tripe. I wasn't going to Google for it as well. Anyway, I'd never heard of any of it. There was no explanation for anything that was happening. By page 90, I was so bored that listening to the wind or the ringing in my ears was more fun, and so I stopped. Oh, then after the skunkwork discussion, we skipped to another random meaningless conversation somewhere else, laden once again with tons and tons of descriptions that go nowhere. And it was meant to be cyberpunk or science fiction, but not stream of conscience American poetry or whatever. Anyway, so that was the Zenith Angle. I suppose this is now a review about the Zenith Angle. Distraction is not quite as bad as the Zenith Angle. I've actually made it to page 62, and I actually have figured out that there are characters. I even kind of figure out what the characters are on about, but there's some major flaws with this one. It's like the main character has given us nothing to connect to there. And it jumps around mindlessly. It starts off with main character reading about some riots, and they actually sound really interesting. They sound like they were organized and consolidated in a way that can't be described. I wanted more, but after a brief amount of that, we then jumped to something else, which was a whole heap of people on a bus, I think, who'd been part of a presidential election, and now they weren't anymore. So it was on this bus going nowhere, and then they were in some scientific biodome for no apparent reason at all, and the guy's trying to scheme and be all political. Now, many years ago, Robert Heinlein, against my will, convinced me that politics and science fiction could be interesting when I read Double Star. Double Star was interesting. Politics can be made interesting. Science fiction and politics can go together, but that's not what's happening here so far. And we just sort of bounced around. Now he's bouncing around to building a motel for some reason. And he's building the motel because he wants to go to Washington and be a politician, I think. Maybe. Something like that. And Stirling in the beginning here, it's like, oh yeah, first of all we had the riot, which is interesting. Then we jumped to the tour bus, and then this tour bus, and then some sort of roadblock that's been happening more and more in America, because we're sort of future America where things are falling apart a little bit. And this roadblock is being engineered by an air force because they need to raise money. So basically they're hijacking random people using the highway and forcing them to give them money, which sounds very... I mean, it sounds like it should be interesting. It manages not to be. It manages to be really boring, in fact. But it's odd. Okay, I wanted more of the riot. I didn't want this weird walking up and down the line and the Air Force selling cups of chicory coffee to people. It's like, WTF. But yeah, so this roadblock by the Air Force to raise money for their base... When he was writing this, Stirling was doing something. Now, I'm not an author. I've never studied literature, really. I just read books. So I often don't know the jargon. But recently I listened to someone who is an author and does understand literature. And he was talking about this one particular method that people can use where if they're talking about something serious that should have an emotive connection, that should be important to the reader, and they then throw in a comedy or humour value too soon, it negates the emotive value. I can't remember who it was, but whoever it was, they were really good. If I remember, I'll add a link, because it was certainly worth watching. And I feel that that's what Stirling's doing here with his roadblock. The idea of an Air Force base being forced to basically commit highway robbery under the pretext of doing a bake sale. That should be full of pathos, right? But it's written in this jingly little tone of humour quirk that negates all the force that this could have had. It's like, I didn't like that. It's like, I think we're not being quirky at the moment, at least. Anyway, I'm going to try and make it to at least page 100. I didn't manage to do that on the Zenith Angle, but I'm going to try this time. If anyone has actually read and enjoyed Stirling, tell me why. I'm curious. Tell me if I should continue with this. Well, somewhere between page 63 and 470, is something going to happen that's worth my time? Just let me know if you think there is. I really do want to know.